Hello guys, I'm Matt and welcome to a new episode of my animation analysis and breakdown series. Thank you for your awesome support in the last video, which to this day has achieved almost 800 views. It's a big number for a 40-minute video, so I'm really happy about it. A few days ago, the Part 2 LRs were released and, well, it was an interesting time for sure. Unfortunately, we didn't get the highly requested Goku Black Super Saiyan Rose, but instead we got a new Super Saiyan Future Gohan. And today we are going to analyze him in all of his details. I won't have as much to say as I did with Vegito, thankfully, because first of all we have way less animations, and second, the quality in this is much more consistent, which means that the number of mistakes is way less compared to the Part 1 units. But are these animations good enough to make up for the missed villain LR or not? Let's find out. The intro. This animation is well executed overall. It's not too long nor too short, it has just the right length. We start off with Gohan approaching the camera enveloped in his aura. I liked that they kept the darker palette he had in the anime, because usually when characters have their aura on, both Dokkan and the anime itself tend to give them brighter and contrasting colors, but this is a different and frankly interesting approach which is definitely appreciated. The movement is basically one-to-one with the source material, so I can't really blame the Dokkan team for this, but I wish that the little jump Gohan does before deactivating his aura and starting his landing was less junky. It probably is a problem given by the pose before, which lasts on the screen for a few extra frames with very little skeletal movement, which ultimately gives a static feeling before transitioning to the jump. Small nitpick, but you know me. The next section I don't have anything to say. The landing is very good with a good recoil animation both on his body and the left sleeve in particular as Gohan is standing up. And after this came an unexpected surprise. They chose to use a scene from movie 10, Broly's Second Coming, for the Super Saiyan transformation. I didn't expect it at all during the Dokkan Now, and I have to say they kinda caught me off guard. I thought that they wanted to save those animations for a movie 10 Gohan in the future, but I guess they didn't need to? Who knows? Obviously, since we are taking from a movie with the Buu Saga designs, we are taking for granted that the animation is going to be good. And oh boy, it does. The whole power-up sequence all the way to the final close-up are pretty much perfect from an animation standpoint. However, I have two issues with this last half of the intro. First, I think the Cell Saga design, shading style and colors make the first close-up worse than how it was in the movie. If you look closely, you can see that Dokkan decided to not replicate all the parts with the second tone of shadows, which results, in my opinion, in a way less detailed face. I think the colors as well play their role here, because Movie 10 Gohan's base palette has much more contrast than what Future Gohan has, which again makes the Dokkan face have less depth compared to the movie counterpart. And second, in the movie, when Gohan powers up, we can see that the rock he's standing on starts to shatter and crumble away, which was a cool detail to emphasize even more the power of the Saiyan. This, however, doesn't happen in the Future Gohan animation. I wish they made the building break even just a bit, because it would have made the power-up much cooler to watch for me. As said previously, the final close-up is extremely well done, good animation, no same assets loop, but actual new frames for both air and clothes, good shading, and they nailed Gohan's expression. Even though I wished they added the pink lightning he had in the original scene, but I mean, it's fine either way. Before starting to talk about the attack animations, we all know that this Future Gohan card is a What If, or Dokkan Original, whatever you wanna call it, which represents a Gohan that has metaphorically taken Goku and Piccolo's wills to achieve victory against the androids. In both of his essays, we can see references taken from attacks done by Goku, Piccolo, Trunks, and even the androids themselves. I think this is such a cool thing to do, because it's as if everything related to Future Gohan has been condensed in a single card. Both the good and bad things, his allies and his enemies. And it's so cool. 12 key. This, I think, is the best animation of this unit, excluding the active. It has a more interesting approach and choreography compared to the 18 key. We start off with a dash towards the camera taken, as I was saying before, from Goku vs Cell, which is followed up by a kick, which is a combination of both Goku and Trunks with a cool impact effect on top of it. After that, we have a scene that I'm not the biggest fan of, and here's why. We see Gohan teleporting and hitting the enemy with a camera angle and characters placement that make it look like the hybrid Saiyan is punching the enemy into the ground, which doesn't happen. Instead, the enemy sprite gets blown away towards our right, even though the punch punch came from an upwards angle. I'm not the biggest fan of this because it's a small inconsistency, however Gohan's eyes tracking and following the direction of the enemy is a nice attention to detail, so we like that. After it, we have a beautiful sequence of Gohan doing a front flip and then kicking the enemy further away in the distance. This is the beginning of why I strongly believe that the 12 key is better than the 18 key. It's not just the usual combo plus special move finisher type of animation, but you can see Gohan doing more elaborated movements like this one and, as we are going to see in a moment, having scenes with unusual and unique camera angles. In fact, the next scene is once again a reference taken straight out of movie 10, where Gohan teleports behind the enemy and after an insanely cool camera movement and body rotation, launches the enemy and the Ki Blast, which has a really nice texture by the way, it's not as simple as usual, into the sky. The movement here is so good and fluid, which together with the Ki Blast stretching his shape as he hits the enemy, makes this section a 10 out of 10 for me. I only wish they kept the movie smears as Gohan teleports behind the enemy, because they added that little extra touch to the animation, and overall I'm a big fan of smears in general. The ending shot is just awesome. The exaggerated perspective on his legs, this super rare and almost never seen low camera angle, and the explosion assets make it stand out from a lot of the other animations both in this celebration and in this haul here as well. I also really liked how the explosion is perfectly centered between those rain rails. I have no idea if this is the right naming or not, which is a magnificent composition choice. The 18 key. I will talk very little about this animation, since in my opinion there is not a lot to say here. It's the usual 1 or 2 hits plus a special move sequence that Dokkan always does. Sure, the movie 10 and Piccolo references are neat, but that's about it. The animation in general is decent throughout the whole thing, so I don't really have any mistakes to point out, to be honest. I have a few nitpicks here and there, however. The impact frame of the kick stays on the screen for too long in my opinion. They should have erased a couple of frames, and the smoke assets after the kick are well done, but I want you guys to remember the position in which the enemy is thrown at. We can clearly see that Android 18 doesn't go far away from Gohan, instead she basically is just below him. Well, after Gohan charges the special beam cannon, which I think could have used a bit more in-betweens, it's not that big of a deal compared to other instances, but you can notice it briefly, and fires it, we can see that the beam goes way further away from where Gohan is, which isn't quite right, taking into consideration the previous scene. I know that it's not that big of a deal, and most of you will say who cares, but as I had problems with these inconsistencies in the Super Saiyan Blue Goku and Vegeta's animations, I will highlight the same issues here as well. The explosion at the end is well done, it has the same style as the explosion from LR Piccolo's 18 key, which gives it a personality as the special beam cannon exclusive explosion and not a generic smoke cloud after some Ki Blast, which is surely appreciated. As said before, this animation is nothing special compared to the previous one. It's not the worst, but it's not the best either. It works fine. I would have honestly expected something more from an ultra super attack, but at least seeing a future Gohan using the special beam cannon was cool to see. The active. Now, the moment you are all here for. His active. The Another Hope. It's an amazing concept and I can't express with words how much I appreciate that they are starting to make more Dokkan original and what if stuff. I cannot wait to see what they are gonna do in the future, even though I think that if they want to continue to produce animations of a similar quality as the Vegito special, they must hire more artists or find a way to not sacrifice completely most of the other animations. I'm looking at you, Goku and Vegeta, Zamasu, and Trunks. I think it's not a good idea to focus everything on just 1 or 2 animations, leaving all the others with an awful quality, which is unacceptable for the premium units of the most important celebration of the year. Anyways, back to Gohan. This animation showcases an alternate outcome where Gohan managed to defeat the androids with his Kamehameha, thanks to remembering his beloved father and master and finding the strength needed to become a beacon of hope in the depths of despair. I've seen a few people say that they weren't happy with some parts of the animation being the same as older iterations of the character. Normally I would agree, but I think in this case it's a good thing and that it was exactly what they were aiming for. As I said, this is just how things would have gone if Gohan was strong enough to destroy his enemies with this single blast. It's a different outcome for the same scene, and as such, it totally makes sense for some parts to be the same. I don't think it's a perfect 11 out of 10 animation, and I have a few small issues in some parts, but overall it is still very well done. We start with basically the same close-up as the intro, which I have to say looks even better, especially the animation on the air, which feels much more natural. We then transition in a kinda rough way from inside the aura to not only having the camera outside, but also with Gohan in a completely different position and angle. It's a very fast change, so your brain doesn't really notice its roughness, but could have used some work for sure. The next scene I think has just pure Inao in it. Beautiful drawings, the rounded shapes, the amazing shading depth, the fluid animation, everything is spectacular. I like that after the full widescreen transition, not only does the Ki Blast actually form into Gohan's hand, but he also expands his aura as well. Before that transition, we see that the aura is pretty close to the body and almost adapts its shape to it. But after the white flash, we see that its size has increased, which is a nice way to visually communicate the surging power coming from the Saiyan. Gohan stretches his arm back with a very good pose that gives anticipation for what's to come next, but I have to say I'm not the biggest fan of the shading. It's not technically wrong, since they are treating the Ki Blast behind as the main light source, but we need to consider that he still has the aura on and the Ki Blast isn't that big yet, so I would have personally made the shadows less dominant. He then fires the Kamehameha with an incredibly good close-up coupled with smears and black effects lines, followed by a really dynamic pose with his leg forward to mirror in a way his right arm. I have a small issue with this section though. The camera is supposedly being enveloped by the Kamehameha, yet we can clearly see the normal Super Saiyan Gohan's palette and just a few beams of energy coming from his end. I wish we got the usual inside blast scene with the color palette of the character being influenced by the colors of the Kamehameha, or at least they should have animated the blast covering the whole camera and turning everything into the new palette. Again, small nitpick, but I think it could have looked so much better with that. I don't have anything to say for what comes next. The blast approaching and hitting the enemy is well done, and the shot from the top where we see everything that's happening is very cool and animated well. We then have the reused scene where Gohan is struggling to keep up. Again, I don't have any issue with it, since it was also redrawn and reanimated to look way better than the old counterpart. I have yet another small nitpick here. I don't know why, but the crunch between the eyebrows is missing, which isn't a big deal in the slightest, but to me personally is a bit bothersome. But here end all my issues with this animation, because what comes next is just a masterpiece. Everything about the Dokkan original part is immaculate. Seeing Gohan's surprised face as he remembers Goku and Piccolo and finds the strength inside him needed to win was truly an emotional moment. And hearing the scream of all the three voices together only further improved this already incredible scene. I maybe wished they didn't reuse the exact one-to-one angle as the card art, but instead made a new one, but at the same time, I mean, they just added there, so why not use it? I completely understand. The androids get obliterated, the dark atmosphere is no more, and the sunlight starts to shine again on the city and an exhausted Gohan. The chaos screen is simply the cherry on top of the cake. The light coming from the top right corner together with a new and brighter palette for Gohan make him stay true to the definition of Beacon of Hope. Such a cool animation. And with that, this analysis comes to an end. As said at the beginning, this video didn't turn out to be as long as Vegito for a variety of reasons, but this is pretty much all I had to say about Gohan's animations, which I think are overall the best and most consistent of this whole celebration. In the next video I'm going to discuss Trunks animations, and man, it's gonna be fun. For you guys. For me it will just be painful, because I would rather not make that video. I do not like being rude and evil with Dokkan's animation, but for Trunks, it's needed. But that's a story for another time. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!